What's up, concert addicts? Johnny Kinsvater here with Concert Addiction with some festival news. And it's not a lineup announcement, but this festival I haven't talked about yet. So I'm going to break down the whole lineup in this video because I think it's badass. And for whatever reason, I just haven't gotten around to talking about it yet. But the news is that Billy Idol and Blondie have been announced that they are being added to the first annual, I believe, Roxodus Music Festival. I believe it's the first one. I'm not entirely sure, so I might be wrong about that. But I'd never heard of this thing before. I heard about it a little while ago. It's a rock music festival, primarily classic rock, that's going to take place in Canada later this year in Ontario. It's taking place July 11th through the 13th. And yeah, like I said, the news is they're adding Billy Idol and Blondie, which would be awesome news for any event. But once I start talking about the rest of this lineup, you'll realize how that just is going to make this fucking thing way more awesome. And I'm super stoked about it. I have a couple questions about these additions. First would be, Billy Idol just announced, which you could go watch a video that I made about this, but Billy Idol announced that him and Steve Stevens are going to tour as a duo for the first time this year. They're going to be playing some smaller spots, having intimate kind of shows, a lot of storytelling, that kind of thing. It's all going to be acoustic. Steve Stevens has been playing with Billy Idol for like 30 years or something, but this is the first time that they're marketing themselves as a duo as opposed to just Billy Idol. It's Billy Idol and Steve Stevens, and I think that's badass. I'm just not sure if that's how it's going to be for this festival or if it's going to be a full band. I imagine that it would be a full band just because I feel like that would work better in the festival setting. But it is Billy Idol, and nobody's going to fucking complain if he wants to play acoustically with his buddy. That being said, it's going to be awesome no matter what. And yeah, great addition to the lineup. Billy Idol has done some festivals in the past. He played Riot Fest a couple of years ago, and I think he's popped up on a couple other ones here and there. And so, yeah, it's cool to see him doing this. And the tour, the Steve Stevens tour, that might be more of an experimental thing. I'm not entirely sure. It's either experimental or it's just something that they've always wanted to do, and now they're finally doing it because they fucking can. He's Billy Idol, he's Steve Stevens. If they want to just go out on the road and do a month where they're just having fun, more power to them. I'm glad that they're doing that. They never really announced if that's going to be a permanent situation or not, and I don't think it is. I think it's just for the purpose of that one tour. Nonetheless, great to see him on there. And then we got Blondie, who had a huge tour last year with Garbage. I'm not familiar with them doing too many other festivals. I might have to look back a little further. I'm sure they've done them, but they're not a prominent like festival circuit band. So it's cool to see them, and they bring good performances wherever they go. And yeah, that Garbage tour sold out, and I think Blondie has more name recognition than Garbage does. But that being said, they're both awesome, so it's cool they got one of them for this thing. So now I'll talk about the full lineup that they've announced, or I'll just hit the big names real quick. I'll make this one quick. Our headliners are going to be Kid Rock, Nickelback, and Lynyrd Skynyrd. So I did mention that this is primarily a classic rock festival, and you might not get that from these three headliners, but once I talk about the rest, you will. Kid Rock is a good get for any type of rock festival. He's done Rocklahoma, he's done the Rock Jam or the Loudwire Festival, whatever it used to be called, the one that they did at the Jam Ranch in Grand Junction, Colorado. He brings energy to any type of performance. He could play at a rodeo, or he could do an arena tour. He's his own kind of genre, and so it'll definitely work having him play with all these classic rock bands. Because he's so different from everybody else, you can kind of throw him in anywhere. And he's going to kill, and yeah, there's some other Southern flavor on this lineup too, so it's just going to emphasize all that. Nickelback gets shit on more than probably any band in the history of the world, but then they get picked to headline festivals like this, so that really makes you realize that most people online are just blowing smoke out their ass, because Nickelback is one of the most successful groups of all time, and a big part of them being that successful is how well they deliver during their live shows. I've seen them a couple times, and they just come on stage just with a lot of power. There's just something about how they play their shows that even if you don't like their music, you're probably still going to have a good time. I do think it's a little risky having them be a headliner, not only because there's other artists on this bill that I feel like might be bigger and could probably fill that headline slot. But you might have people leaving, like if you want to go back in time to the Guns N' Roses Metallica Stadium tour where Metallica opened, and then as soon as they finished, the stadium emptied out, and Axl Rose would get all pissed off every night because he was playing to empty crowds because people were really just there for Metallica. You might have that here, but probably not, because I'm looking at this from an American standpoint, and Nickelback is Canadian, and so I bet they're admired up there. I bet they don't care what the rest of the world has to think about them, and I'm happy for them because, like I said, I don't know if you can see it, but I've got a Nickelback flag right here. I've got some pics here too. We went VIP to their show at Red Rocks a couple years ago, and it was fucking amazing. They're a great live band, so it's cool to see them on this lineup. I just think that if this was in the United States, I don't know that they'd be headlining just because of the risk of people leaving. But like I said, that's an American perspective. They're probably not worried at all because, yeah, it's a pretty cool thing to come from Canada. Better than some of the other musical artists that they have contributed to the industry. And Lynyrd Skynyrd, who is should be wrapping up their farewell tour at the time of this festival. I'm not entirely sure. They announced the Last of the Street Survivors tour last year. They didn't say how long it could go. It was kind of open-ended, much like Ozzy and Elton John have done. They announced that they're wrapping up, but they don't exactly know when. They're going to keep going, probably until they stop getting offers and until they have enough money saved up that they feel comfortable retiring. But regardless, it's cool to see them on this bill, and it's cool that they're hitting these festivals on their final tour. They've done the festival circuit a bit in the past. I know they played Carolina Rebellion in 2016, I think it was, and they're going to bring people in for sure. They're one of the most iconic rock bands of all time, probably the most iconic Southern rock band of all time. And people debate online if they're going to go see them or not, because at this point in time, people consider it a cover band just because of the issues with them not being the original lineup, even though there's good reasons for that. I mean, we've lost some people in severe tragedies and things like this along the way in the Lynyrd Skynyrd saga. So to see them still carrying on and making music, even if it's not the original guys, they're keeping the legacy alive. And even though they're wrapping it up now, it's still cool to see them. And hopefully they pop up on a couple more festivals before they announce their final show date. Because I don't know that they've announced that. They've announced that they're finishing up, and they've announced several runs of their final tour. But they haven't said which show will be the last one. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. The other three artists on this bill that I will mention, because or four rather, there's a couple on here that I don't recognize, so I'm not gonna spend my time talking about them because I don't want to just be blowing smoke. If it's an artist I don't recognize, I don't want to act like I know everything about them when I clearly do not. Alice Cooper, Peter Frampton, Cheap Trick, and Lita Ford. So now you see why this is a primarily classic rock music festival. But it's a diverse classic rock fest. It's not like they're going all hair metal or all, female leads or all anything like that. There's a lot of diversity in here. I'll start with Lita Ford because she's arguably the smallest. She's been doing some large-scale touring forever, but especially I've seen her ramp it up over the past couple years. She's been working with a lot of different people. She did a big tour with Hailstorm a couple of years back. And, yeah, she's a living legend who I feel like doesn't get as much credit as she deserves. And her sets are mostly full of runaway songs, but there's not a problem with that if you ask me, because she's just as important to that, if you ask me, as the other half of the duo. So, super excited that she's also going to be on this lineup. And, yeah, like I said, she's done festivals before. She played at Freedom Fest a couple years ago, which is an awesome event, which they're about to announce, so I'll make a video talking about that soon. But, yeah, she's a good get for this festival. Peter Frampton, if you watched my end of the year videos or listen to any of my podcasts, I saw Peter Frampton last year, and he blew me the fuck away. And mostly it was just because of the energy that he brought. I wasn't expecting it. It wasn't a planned thing. I won tickets to the concert the day of the concert. And I entered, if I ever see something, I'm scrolling through Facebook or listening to the radio, if I ever have a chance to win tickets, I always try to win, even if it's something that I have like mild interest in seeing. Peter Frampton is one of these that I've always wanted to see, but it was the day of the show and I hadn't bought my tickets yet, so clearly it wasn't that important to me. But I won them. I was like, oh yeah, well, cool, we'll go, we'll have a good time. Usually, sometimes you see these older musicians, and it's just a fun night, fun, nice, relaxing. That they just get up there and play their stuff and go home. And it's a good night, nothing over the top, nothing too crazy. It's just a solid performance. But with him, you got that, but the energy was jacked through the roof. It was one of the most energetic, live performances I've seen. Just the charisma, how he worked the crowd. It was fantastic. So to see him playing a big rock music festival like this, before I saw him, I might have thought, well, that's kind of weird. I mean, he's a huge name, right? But that doesn't seem like somebody that would fit well at a rock festival. But after seeing him live, believe me, he will be perfect for this. Alice Cooper, he was the main one that I was talking about when I talked about Nickelback and saying maybe there's another band there that might be bigger that could fill that headline slot as well. And that is Alice Cooper. And for some reason, I'm sure he's talked about it before. I just haven't read anything. He doesn't headline as much as he could. He did a tour last year, but most of his recent tours have been, civic centers or auditoriums or things like that. He hasn't done headlining at big festivals or big amphitheaters or arenas or anything like that, and he definitely could. He pretty much invented shock rock, if you ask me, and he has some very iconic songs. So for me, I think that it's got to be personal choice for him to not be headlining more. Nonetheless, it's really cool to see him on this lineup. And he was also at the Carolina Rebellion that I mentioned before, the year that Skynyrd was there too, so he is familiar with playing music festivals. And I always just kind of wonder, though, what his sets are like at festivals. Because I've seen him opening up for Motley Crue twice. But it was in a big arena, so he had the big stage, so he could do all his props and all his crazy theatrics and stuff that he does with his performance. And you probably still get that at a festival, but they have to change the stage and do everything so quickly that you might not get the full thing. But I might not be wrong. I might be wrong. He's been doing this for so long that they probably have a system figured out to where he can move his stuff in and out pretty quick, and it's not going to affect any other artists on the lineup. So, yeah, I think he's an awesome addition to this. And then Cheap Trick. They're a solid band. They've been touring for quite some time. A couple of years ago, they did the Rock Hall 3-for-All tour with Joan Jett, and I can't remember who else was on that, but someone else that was in the Rock Hall. But they're a great band to see. They played with Poison last year, so they've kind of been not doing a whole lot of headlining themselves. Oh, it was Heart, I think, that was on that tour. Sorry, my brain went back. But anyways, Cheap Trick, like I said, opened for Poison on tour last year, and they did the co-headline with those other two artists for the Rock Hall 3-for-All. They don't do a lot of large-scale headline touring, even though they obviously could. So same mention for them about them being kind of lower on this bill and not in the headline spot, but it's still cool to see them on there, and they've got so many songs that everybody knows. That's the thing about them, why they would be a good addition for a festival, is because even though, they're not heavy or rowdy like a Kid Rock or, like an Alice Cooper, I forgot, so I had to look. My brain is not here today. But anyways, their songs are so singable that alone will make it awesome for a festival, because people love singing, and especially in these environments when you get a festival, especially if it's successful, thousands of people there all singing these songs. It'll be a fun night for sure. So in addition to Blondie and Billy Idol, the Roxodus Festival will feature Kid Rock, Nickelback, Lynyrd Skynyrd, Alice Cooper, Peter Frampton, Cheap Trick, and Lita Ford. I'll post a link in the description where you can see the full lineup, because I mentioned there's a couple that I didn't talk about. You can get your ticket information and all that other stuff there too. Thanks for watching this video. Make sure to like it if you liked it and subscribe to the channel. Also check out my Facebook page, facebook.com/concertaddiction, and get your tickets to Roxodus. Thanks for watching. Until next time. Bye.